We have privilege of listening to Ma'am Dr. Amita Prasad. Ma'am, may we request you to come on dais for the presentation on automation of disaster management plan. Welcome on dais, ma'am. Dr. Amita Prasad is Director General of ATI Mysore. She has held various administrative positions, of which a few can be taken very quickly. She was Principal Secretary, DPR, Administrative Reforms. She was in the RDPR. She was in the Urban Development. Right now, she also holds a Power Portfolio as a Principal Secretary. And as DG ATIM, the officer category and staff in general of Government of Karnataka have been immensely benefited by her proactive measures in taking up issues and organizing trainings in a much different way. Ma'am, we are ready to listen to you. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, friends. This is a presentation which ATI, which is a training institute, has already announced. I am the Director General there, and we have a Center for Disaster Management there. The center is responsible for preparation of state disaster management plan, also the 30 district disaster management plans. And we train about more than 4,000 people per year. India is a large country, so the population is large, so we are able to cover a lot of people. Then we do the training program through satellite mode also. And that training program is for mostly for the school people and also people who are the elected representative. The numbers are large. Wherever there is a large number, we do that. This work which we are showing it to you, it is the use of IT in preparation of disaster management plan. ATI started it last year, and we are doing it for 6 districts this year. And we did it for 1 district we have already completed, that is Raichur district. In this endeavor, we had Mr. Manoj Kumar who helped us, who is with the Corporation Department. I'll request Manoj also to come and make the presentation along with me. In this, when we talk about automation of disaster management, we have given it a name, TAMED also, so that it not only looks good, it is easy to remember. Now, in this presentation, we have certain contents. We will tell you what we do in this, components, and then how do we go about the field survey, advantage, and then screenshots are there. I'll be taking maybe 5 to 6 slides, and the technical part will be talked about by Manoj. Now, when we talk about it, and last 3 days you are listening to various aspects of disaster management, one thing will come to your mind, that what is lacking maybe in our country is about the information system itself. Like if you look at Uttarakhand or you look at the disaster which are a new disaster like maybe Gujarat, of course it was very sudden earthquake and all, and then tsunami or even Bombay, this Mumbai floods, like last 5-6 times whichever disaster in last 10 years when we see, there is a difference between in the last decade of last millennium and this decade now. One thing is that there was no Disaster Management Act. After the act has come, lot of new things has happened, lot of streamlining has happened, a lot of focus has been happening, and I think this seminar is also a part of that focus, that we are looking at the cities itself. Second thing which is important is that in disaster management, when we look at it, the data are not available. The past experiences are not done, and that there will be nothing to tell, because like suppose we look at the floods of 2009. Karnataka faced the floods in 2005, 2006, 2007. 8 was 1 year when we did not have much of the flood. Then 9 was in the recent last 3 years, 9 was this thing where we had lot of flooding. Bangalore faces the urban flooding almost every year. We have a very big aero show in Bangalore every alternate year. But then if you ask for a disaster plan, it will not be there. Why it is not there? Because one thing is that it requires a lot of time and effort to prepare a planning. Second thing is that standards have not been fixed up in disaster management. And I think this is one thing which I keep repeating and keep requesting NIDMA and NDMA that you must have standards. We are talking about how do you deal with it. I am talking about how do you plan for it. And I think there is not much difference. Unless there is a good planning, you cannot do it. As I was telling you that the training part which from our institute we do, we try to reach to the lowest level of our government functionaries, that is the Gram Panchayat level also. The idea is that they should be able to have the data, have the information in the real time, and should be able to have a decision. Now, if you remember the shots at the television for Uttarakhand, a lot of people were not knowing what to do. Like one shot came, and I remember that, where to store the material which has been received, whether at the stadium or whether at some place. That debate was going on, and they were showing us in some TV channel that people and the officers are not knowing what to do with the receive of material. When Jammu Kashmir earthquake happened, similar thing happened. Lot of blankets, medicine and everything came, and people were not knowing how to deal with it. The idea is that what I'm trying to say is that there are 2-3 issues which needs immediate attention of the people who plan, immediate attention of the people who are in the policy making, that when we are talking about disaster, it should be a good planning, then the data management and the decision making based on that. The IT based solution which we did it is based on this. Second thing is what that analysis of whatever is available. If you look at the response time, we are talking about incident command system and your response time, and we are talking about cities and how we can respond. And we also talked about proactive systems and not reactive. If you look at it, that analysis of data is complex. Wherever, whatever was the past experience and something like that, it is difficult. And the third thing is that, how do you relate? See, I am not talking big. I'm not talking big because finally it is the man at the moment, whether he is able to or she is able to take a decision during a disaster, that is most important. Does the person at the moment is able to take a decision, whether to shift this, whether not to shift it, whether to open this gate or not to open this gate? Unless we do like this, it is difficult. We were hearing, I'm sure some of you will remember, we had a big fire in Carlton Hotel, and I was listening to the MD of the, I think, Manipal Hospital, who made a presentation after this disaster, and how their response was there. He was telling us, and I particularly remember this, he said that there was only one gate earlier for the hospital. It was both for in and out ambulances, and he had taken a decision to have 2 gates. Instead of only 1 gate, he wanted to have 2 gates, and he had done it. And he was making a presentation, and he said there that because there were 2 gates, the ambulances had an easy access, and from 1 gate ambulances were coming, and from second, so there was no crowding. Now this is a very small thing, but it is very relevant that when we are talking about standard operating procedures, everybody's role needs to be defined, and this is what we have tried to do in this. Which I told you, TAMED, we kept it as a simple name, it looks nice. Technology Automation for Management of Emergency and Disaster. And this is again what I said, that collection of data and the analysis and the communication, and that is what, and GIS, GPS location. What do we require? Suppose Bangalore is a place which is very vulnerable from point of view of urban flooding. It is very vulnerable from point of view of terrorism. It is very vulnerable from the point of view of any air strike also. If you look at Bangalore airport, there are no 2 exits. If God forbidden something happens to Bangalore airport, there is no separate exit. In fact, I keep telling BIAL people that you must have a emergency exit plan and you must have a disaster plan. They must be having a disaster plan, but then there is no second exit from Bangalore airport. You can check it up. So when we are talking about it, then when we are having this, and these type of information will only come when we start analyzing what is available, what is not. The third thing will be, again I said, all these things are required for a decision-making process. Why do we do this? Why do you have an exercise? If you look at Western countries, they all have gold, copper, silver standards are there. So if there is a, they will open it, and I was surprised that in UK, the standards of disaster management is as old as 1948, and they update it every time. And the disaster, if you look at that London bomb blast in the tube railway, and the response time which they take was maybe 38 seconds or 22 seconds. If it is something happens in our country, what is the response time? People will not be available. The most people, their mobiles will be switched off. So idea is that everybody should be on the same page and should be able to do it. So I am only saying that the IT-based automation system is a decision-making tool. It is not only that once we put it, everything will be there. It only helps. If you have a SOP where everybody knows what is my job, it will be easier to handle. If everybody is briefed or everybody knows where to shift people in case of disaster, it is much easier. Now, you all are having 3 days of workshop, and I'm sure you understand what is a district disaster management plan, and you are talking about cities. I'm very glad that I had been requesting government that in Government of India also, that when you are talking about disaster, talk about the cities. And each city which is more than population of 5 lakhs should have a separate disaster plan. I'm glad that this workshop is trying to address that. You have a city-wise, especially mega cities are having some type of plan on that. And I think Government of India has also agreed, and some this thing has come that population of 8 to 10 lakh, they should have a separate plan. Imagine Bangalore having a city plan along with Bangalore district. I mean, this is a problem. Now, as I told you that we talk about response. The entire thing is about response. So that is, this is one issue. And then if you look at the point number 4, management of resources. You have human resources, you have other material resources, and management will be an important issue. And then arbitrary responses, and this is what we Indians are, we are a jugaad country, isn't it? So in jugaad country, what happens, we just manage, we are very happy, oh, we tackled it very well. When we had floods in Bellary, some of the doctors met me, and they told me, madam, 100 of us had gone, and there was nobody to tell us where to go. So after 3 days, we came back from Bellary, and we did not know what to do it. Because our resources were not used. Now, if there is a proper plan and if something has to be done, that can be done. Now, I'll request Manoj to talk about it, and this is about the cycle and all which you are aware. Manoj will take up from how we do the data, how this process is done, and how we are about to do it. Manoj? Thank you. No, I'll come back.
Thank you, Madam, and I would thank the organizers for conducting such an important workshop and giving me this opportunity to explain on the small initiative which we started off at ATI Mysore. We had taken up Raichur district to prepare the district disaster management plan, and in the second phase, as Madam said, 5 more districts have been lined up, of which 2 have already initiated, have started the first basic course. If you just look at the slides made by the Director General, she very rightly spoke about the status of the district disaster management plan in India. And today, we would see that it is a paper-based document. And when I say it's a paper-based document, you would understand that how much of up-to-date information it can possess. And then when I say a paper-based document, you would also understand whether it has a dialogue, whether it can do analysis for me, talk to me over there. The answers to all these questions are a big no. Going with the premise that a DDMP is very essential for the district authorities to handle disaster, we came out with this premise that if we can provide them with an up-to-date district disaster management plan, having the state-of-art mechanism of collecting the information through web-based systems, through mobile-based systems, wirelessly from the field, authenticated from geostamping into a centralized server, providing them analytical tools for them to analyze and come out with complex answers over there, and then documenting the lessons learned, and of course using the state-of-art technology of communicating through SMSs, and then giving them the disaster management plan would be the need of the hour. With this premise, we started off at Mysore. In fact, if you can look at this slide, this is the only difference when we compare it with the previous slide. This was the previous slide, the pre-disaster scenario and the post-disaster scenario. If you just look at the slide which I am now talking, we have just brought in a geo-information database. In the coming slides, I would explain what is this geo-information database, how does it help or aid in the present system. One more clarity I would like to bring over here. During our workshops, multiple workshops we had in Mysore and across in Raichur, we bifurcated the disaster into two, the peace time and the war time. We would easily cut the left side into the peace time, and this is the war time when you will actually have to implement various measures, response, recovery, and all the other things. So the peace time is what we are today, and in the peace time, the output of peace time should be a perfect, documented, able, aided district disaster management plan. If you look at this slide actually captures the component of TAMID. I would take 5 minutes to explain on this slide. In fact, this slide would exactly explain to you what the concept of TAMID is. If you look at the first one, information collection, if I ask this able gathering over here, what are all the resources you can think of which can be used during a disaster, I would come up with some 10 to 15 answers. People would say shelter, people would say medicine, people would say food, cloth, milk, petrol, diesel, and there the list would end at 15, 20 list over there. But when we started this exercise, when we had a group of officers sitting across, starting from the district up till the village level officers sitting across with all other stakeholders and asked them, identify what are all the resources you would require when a disaster strikes, then is when we got a list of 135 resources available at the district which can be utilized. The point I am making here is that if we have a DDMP at such level, brainstorming at such level, and having identified all the possible required resources, I would say the district disaster handling would be much more efficient because much more thought has gone, much more identification of resources has gone. When I talk about resources, it is not about only shelters, it is not about private chemists alone, it talks from a snake catcher to a deep sea driver to a rope to a pulley to a tractor to a JCB. So what we did during this stage of information collection was we identified all the resources and captured information faithfully, completely. What is the use if I say there are 5 tractors in this village? I need to know who the tractor owners are, who the drivers are, and at that point if I have to call them over there, I need to have that kind of information. What is the purpose of saying that I have a chemist over there? What is the purpose of saying I have resource persons who can... So what we did was, what are all the prerequisites to handle a disaster, have that kind of information. So in this process, we have developed near about 60 templates. 60 templates to collect various information. 60 templates to collect various information such that it would suffice an effective DDMP in place. So this 55 to 60 templates which were done were bifurcated department wise. It was given to each of the departments. If there is police department, we will be giving them templates which pertain to human resources, vehicles, wireless, etc. If it is to PWD department, their respective templates were given. So this standardization of templates were done at ATI Mysore. These templates were given to the field officers and they were asked to fill in this information. Now filling this information was not a paper-based information. We asked them to log in. Each of the departments were given username and passwords. The district department head had this username password in his custody. He got in the information keyed in into the web-based system which came directly into the portal. So this information of resources as well as resource persons, the entire information which was required was captured, and this was possible because of standardization of these formats and templates. Now coming to the communication part, when I say remote data exchange, the information which was collected was actually exchanged between the desktop data and the field data. In my next slide, I shall explain to you how this information collection and authentication took place. and alerts and warnings. Suppose the deputy commissioner wants to call all his district officers for an emergent meeting. All that he has to do is to type an SMS and send it. All the respective department district officers will get this message and assemble themselves. It's not that he has to call everybody one by one. So effective communication system mechanism and strategies were put in place. Most importantly, I would put in a statement which came up in Raichur. The deputy commissioner there made a statement that during disaster, everybody does everything, and that is where the chaos actually starts. Though we have got roles and responsibilities very clearly demarcated, it rarely happens in the field. I would just quote a small example. If 500 packets of food has to be delivered to X place, if I give this job to the food inspector to see that 500 packets of food reach this thing, it would be an Herculean task for him. If you split the activity, it is 3 activities. One is preparation and packing of food, one is transporting of the food from the source to the destination where it is required, and third is effective distribution. So in this scenario, the food inspector perfectly does item number 1, but item number 2 and 3, it is difficult for him to arrange a vehicle. And if he goes to distribute there, if he doesn't have a mob controlling experience, it will be chaos there. Suppose, if I ask the Tahsildar to collect the food and the vehicle, it will be difficult for him. If I ask the motor vehicle inspector to arrange the vehicle and pack the food, it will be different. Instead, if I split the work into 3, tell the food inspector, these are the food items I require, you keep it ready at this time. I tell the RTO, you pick up this food and deliver it here. I tell the Tahsildar, food is coming, you distribute here. It is little more and easily done. So what we are talking about is that we are looking into a mechanism where at the point disaster strikes, there must be an action plan which the deputy commissioner should be able to generate. What I say is that if X village is flooding, the action plan should be that Tahsildar so-and-so has to distribute food, he has to reach there. Food inspector has to prepare food, this has to go to this location. So it should be a clear communicated role strategies which has to come out in form of printout which the deputy commissioner will sign and dispatch. So this is what we are talking about, mapping the roles and responsibilities, following the standard operating procedures, and then have this strategy of coordination. I will come with what if analysis in the coming slides over there. Continuous updation. So the data which has been collected once from the district authorities is not stale. As Madam in her speech said, that periodically it will be updated. There would be certain departments which need to update once in 3 months. There are certain once in 6 months and certain departments once in 12 months. There will be auto alerts to the respective department saying that information of yours has not been updated. So what is this information needs to update? If there is a transfer of officers during that period, he has to update those key officers onto the portal with their designation and number. If there are new resources which have been come into the system, he has to add those new resources into the system. So this is how we have this continuous updation process over here. And more importantly, documentation, that is the auto DDMP. All this information which is collected into the centralized server is actually designed in such a way you get the DDMP out. So what the DDMP is having is that it has metadata and then this dynamic data from each of the tables which gets enriched by an entry of any of these field level officers is being pulled out over there and a DDMP is generated. And this DDMP will be available online anytime. For any of the department officers to take a printout, it's available in soft copy. So you will have the time printed when this DDMP was generated. So this is what we talk about, documentation, MIS reports, and most importantly, the maps. Now that we are going to geo-coordination and collecting each of these resources, you have a map in which you say, here is my water body. If there is firefighting exercise, this is the nearest water body which you must be using to douse the fire. If there is the requirement of a private hospital, it will say, here is the nearest private hospital available for you. This is where you will have to access. So what we have done is we have developed a map, and each of this map is enriched with actual field authenticated data saying where the resource is residing. For example, in Raichur, one of the main issue was they didn't have helipad information. If they had effective helipad information, they would have pressed in the services of choppers during that time. So during this time what we did, we have now mapped all the possible helipad areas along with the latitude, longitude over there, plus the altitude, such that we can give it for helipad, we can give it for formation of helipads. The mobile is here. So I will just run through. I have got another 8 minutes to finish. 425 बोला ना सर? Okay, so this slide I would like you to just see the uniqueness of DDMP lies here, saying that the district based available information, that is as the district level, I know this is my census population, this is the human population, this is the cattle population, these are the statistics. I have rainfall data, I have topography, I have agriculture, everything I have pumped in. I have got information of how many school buildings I have got, how many godowns I have got, how many warehouses I have got. So available information is pumped into the system based into the centralized server. Now this information is authenticated in the geospatial, authenticated with geo coordinates. That means the field surveyor who goes to the field, when he says I am in X village, it will say as per our backend database, X village has 2 shelter places and 1 pharmacy. All that fellow has to do is to take a photograph of that building, wherein the geo coordinates are stamped, and then he has to ascertain, yes, there exists this building is good, it has 3,000 square feet of covered area, it has a water tank, there is a former questionnaire which comes up on the mobile phone, which he authenticates over there, saying that the information given in the field is similar to the information given at the district desktop level. So there is an authentication mechanism, and most importantly, each such resource gets mapped with geo coordinates. So this is what is one thing unique about this system. So as I said, you have the backend server which digitizes information, it goes to database, and from here the mobile phone uploads and authenticates information. So there must be certain information which is very crucial while making this decision, whether you have a water tank, whether there is power, whether there is waterlogging conditions, etc. over here. I will take another 3 minutes on this slide. I think so this slide completely covers the entire strategy over here. The first and foremost strategy in TAMED is that we have considered every individual village or ward as the basic unit. We have not considered district as a unit. So when I say that this table is one unit, I will identify what are the resources available in this table. Similarly to that table. So everybody, every resource and every resource person gets linked on to that village. If there is chaos there is an emergency there is a disaster there, based on the requirement, it will say the nearest geo coordinate available information is in this village, you may access this information over here. It would really help you make a decision over there. Automatically the reports are based on this geo coordination and keeping village as a unit. Let us say there are no geo coordinates, but when I say village, the local people know next to this village, this is the next village. So when he goes to that village, he can identify these are the resources which are available over there. The second important strategy was every information was geo-positioned, be it an office where I can draw the manpower, be it an hospital, be it an shelter, every available information has been geo-positioned in this exercise. Now dynamic database updation, which I told you that information once collected doesn't lie idle. This was the experience we collected from the Election Commission, that periodically how the electoral rolls get renewed, continuous updation. We have brought in the same concept over here, that the available information is there. These are the changes which have taken place over this period, and now the recent document has the latest information which is there. So like this, the dynamic database updation is one crucial element in having an up-to-date information over here. Most importantly, we have this data authentication. It's not that simply I say I have a school, but I tell you what the school is and what is the geo coordinates. Data authentication takes place from the field level. Next is capturing experiences and lessons learned. This is a very important thing which we have put into this TAMED. We say that in the past, what was the experiences, whether food was spoiled, whether it caused dysentery, what happened over there. So this time we know that reaching that village, you can't go by road, you will have to go by boat. If that is an experience, because people were trying to go by road and reach very late over there, we will now have an alternate route to address this time if the same situation persists. So one important component, one important strategy in TAMED is that to capture the experiences, not only from officers, but even from the people who were residing, who were affected, what experiences they had, to capture that from media, press, all those things we try to put in over there, such that the next steps take care of these lessons which we have learned. Then documentation and action taken report. Most importantly, I would like to say what if scenario is another component built into TAMED. If we say that there is a road accident over here, immediately what if scenario says if a road accident is there, you have to tell what is it, you'll have to take patients to the doctor. So nearest hospital is required, you need vehicle to ship them, you need medicines, you need to alert the docs. So there's a very systematic what if scenario. What if this happens? What are all the things you have to do over here? It makes you alert. So So what we have built into this is that if you say A, B, LMN villages are flooded, a what if scenario says ABMN has 500 villagers, 700 population, 800 population, you need to ship them here. It gives a clear-cut action plan to say how you are going to handle the situation. Most importantly, we have got action plan and checklists. Action plan and checklist are new things which have been included into the system. Do's and don'ts, faster communication, and most importantly, availability of the DDMP across over there. It is available on an URL link. Concerned persons can put in and log in and download the DDMP over here. So this is an what if analysis scenario. If the disaster is flood, shelter, healthcare, medicines, transportation, fodder, electricity, food and water. I'll just rush through. So if you make a comparison with the existing DDMP and the tamed DDMP, these are all the issues which you can see. The basic information as per current DDMP is taken into it. The duties and responsibility are much more enhanced, micromanaged, very specifically it has been documented who has to do what. And then the HRVA is enhanced. Telephone directory, this is another new thing which has come into it over here. Telephone directory of the residents, of the mobile number is being documented over here. So in fact, if you look at the DDMP, you have an entire telephone directory over here, a part of it, saying the entire resource persons available, their numbers. It starts from the driver, it starts to the boatman, it starts to everybody over here. You have enhanced maps. As I said, the previous maps would just give you the geopolitical maps, roads and over here. But here we have got icons showing where the helipad is, icons showing where there is a milk booth, icons showing where there are petrol pumps, icons showing where there is water source, which I can use when I have to douse fires. Helipad information is there, water level information, FAQs have been put over there, do's and don'ts, and most importantly, checklists and annexure. Checklist is that for each department, each role, what have you done this, have you put up this, have you put up this, he has to keep ticking over there, such that we are bringing him into a standardized manner of addressing disaster. So if you look at the screenshots, this is how the screenshot looks like. Multiple Excel sheets, 64 Excel sheets which I said, this is how it looks. This is for capturing the hospital. What is the category, resource name, main contact person, PC available, pharmacy attached. Whole lot of information which is required is being digitized over here. So similarly, if you look at an ambulance, this is what we collect, what a number of seats, mobile. This is for resource personnel. Lastly, I will just show you some of the photos taken from the mobile phones. See, these are all shelter places. You can see Lingsugur, Devadurga, the GPS coordinate, what is the school, how much of space is available. So when you make a decision, you have something authenticated in front of you to say that yes, this school, I can have these people, shelter these people over here. Similarly, if you see the hospitals, we have got the hospitals also mapped. We have got milk supply booths mapped. We have got water tanks mapped over there. We have got private drugstores mapped, each with geo coordinates. You can see Sindhanur, and below you can see the GPS coordinates over there. Private buildings which can be used as shelters. You have temples, we have private chowdhuries, wedding halls over here. Veterinary hospitals you can see. So sum and substance is that each information which is in the DDMP is authenticated with geo coordinates. When the disaster occurs, you can use the near the resource available at close to you over there. So this is an example of a map which has this water location points. This is showing the private hospitals. I think so you can see these are all where you have private hospitals in the map over here, and these are helipad information locations over here. So this is how we have enhanced the existing DDMP by using technology, by using state of art. When I say we are hosting this on an entire 4 server, we have used mobile, we have used wireless syncing up of this information, SMS, latest in the SMS communication systems, everything has been utilized in this. It was a small initiative done by ATI. I hope the state will roll out into this mode over there such that you have a single systemized, standardized DDMP in place. Thank you.
You heard about it. And one thing is that information-based system, I mean, this is what it is. Second issue will be that how do you take decision based on the information system? And the time was very less. We could not show you that, how this will help the decision making also. So The idea is that the more and more information-based decision making when it is done, then you are able to do it. Of course, there will be certain disasters which, nobody can predict. But if things are in place, it is easy to move the men and material. I'd like to thank all of you for having patiently listened to our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am and Manoj, for a wonderful presentation. I would now request Toby to speak about his organization and his contribution to the various field here, his organization's contribution. You can be brief and take around 5 to 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I promise that I will not take more than 9 minutes. I think that would be the best attention span you would have at the end of the third day of a good seminar. I'm just trying to share with you how we work around this 360 looking on an issue. And most of the issues that we look touches the life of people. So that's where we try to make some contribution. The topic that I'm just trying to share today is counterfeiting. Looks to be very innocuous. To some, it is just copying. But we have sort of expanded it as to why it is a big threat to national security. So the whole thing is, the fundamental of this is building visibility in the chain of custody, the need for traceability, what threat does compromise supply chains pose to national security? If it does, how can this be mitigated? Has the problem been defined well by the government, industry, and regulatory bodies? Who is the adversary and the policy debate? So if you have a quick look at this slide, you would see original stent pistols and fake currency stun cops. This is Bangalore. Some time back, this came in the newspaper, and for the first time you saw that the person who was carrying currency was also having very sophisticated guns with him. So earlier, gun is handled by somebody, currency is handled by somebody. So slowly this connect is coming, and if you look at, I don't want to go too much into the article, but this is an article of September of last year. So who we are a think tank, as I said before. We work seamlessly with academia, industry, and polity. Our genesis is humanitarian. So most of us would think, how do we know about disaster? Because we started our life in disaster. We have taken part directly in more than 500 relief projects all over the world. We were on the ground in Gujarat, in tsunami. We worked with WHO, International Red Cross, and ActionAid. So basically the foundation was built that the actions of few people can make meaningful difference to millions of people, and that's how this foundation was born. We realized that, by doing a few things, it's history. So the only way to know and do things better was acquiring new technology and acquiring new knowledge. For doing this, we started collaborating with a number of good schools around the world. And in India, we work with the Indian Institute of Science, the Indian Institute of Management, the Institute of Technology, and the National Center for Biological Studies. So what is the connect between humanitarian work and national security? We use the word human, which is human intelligence. And the new watchword in national security is comprehensive national security, which means that you look at the individual. What is comprehensive national security? We talk about the focus is more on the individual, not on the border. So if you see, there is a paradigm shift in the definition of national security from territory, from internal security to energy security. It slowly translates into physical security, societal security, cyber, health, and IP security. So how is comprehensive national security linked to counterfeits? So to the industry, it's a revenue loss. There's a huge loss due to product recalls, corporate social responsibility. In short, we say it's an existential threat to national security. So this is very interesting. According to documents seized from Al-Qaeda camps, focus on counterfeiting operations as a means to replace revenues lost as a result of international counterterrorism efforts. So today, counterfeiting is the 5th biggest threat to national security to the US and the 6th to Europe. Investigators have discovered that incomes from trading in fake cigarettes have been used to fund Al-Qaeda and the IRA. Terrorists in Northern Ireland long relied on kidnapping ransoms until becoming far better financed through sales of counterfeit Disney Lion King merchandise. To the consumer, what does it mean? Risk to personal safety from accidents resulting due to spurious products. Usage of counterfeit automobile parts cost 30,000 deaths and more than 100,000 injuries in 2011 in India. Health issues from spurious consumer products, including pharmaceuticals. These are, I'm sure there are many doctors here, so I thought I might just share this slide. What is it to the society? Some of the vitamins A, D, E that we eat get dissolved in the dietary fat and are stored in as fat in the liver. A toxic ingredient added to the vitamin can remain dormant in the body till a catalyst is introduced to make it active. Catalyst can be subsequently administered through food or other medicine, which means it's a simple bomb inside your body. A brand new report reveals that toxic chemicals linked to asthma and birth defects that are banned in toys were found to be widespread in children's vinyl bags to school supplies including Disney, Dora, and Spider-Man. Samples of clothing for 14 of the most popular brands in the US, including Adidas, most of us wear these sort of dresses now, Uniqlo, Calvin Klein, have tested positive for toxic chemicals known as non-phenol ethoxylates. They mimic female hormones and alter sexual development. To the society, drug resistance is a metabolic reaction. Body will store the history of how to defend and how it got affected. It generates a DNA mutation. Children of the affected person has a probability in the general lottery of conception to get the mutated part of the DNA from the resistant parent, which means if both the parent are drug resistant, the chance that the child would be 100% drug resistant is fairly high. What is it to the country? Loss in credibility. Nobody wants to do business with a country that works a lot on fake products. There is a serious threat to intellectual property because today you have the mantra innovate, 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 but there would be no premium on innovation. Are these incidents in counterfeits, are they related to national security? Look at all the incidents. In pharmaceuticals, evidence of Colombian drug cartels, Russian mafia, Chinese triads, Mexican drug gangs involved in the production and trafficking of spurious drugs. It's estimated that drug counterfeiting in India is about 20%, which means the most vulnerable are those who live in villages. An Interpol report has identified terrorist financing through counterfeit pharmaceuticals by loyalists and union terrorists in Northern Ireland and the local ethnic Albanian extremists in Kosovo. Electronics. This is frightening. Counterfeit phony Cisco routers manufactured in China were sold to the US Naval Warfare Center, the US Air Base in Spangdahlem, Germany, and to Raytheon. FBI is investigating whether these routers provide a gateway to hack into US military information technology. More than 80% of routers that we buy in India are sourced through China. Look at aerospace. Investigation revealed that the Norwegian air crash that killed many people due to counterfeit bolts that were used in the aircraft tail assembly, the tail fell off mid-air, causing the crash. Consumer goods. I'm just running through quickly. Investigators have discovered that income from trading of fake cigarettes have been used both by the IRA and the Al-Qaeda. T-shirts. FBI found T-shirts bearing unauthorized Nike swoosh and Olympic logos. The money was routed to terrorist organizations around the world. Auto components. Usage of counterfeit parts cost 25,400 deaths in 2009. So I'm just not going further than that. Very interesting. I mean, this is something that I found in the food world in Bangalore. There was a mark called kiwi fruit. So I was asking the shopman, where does this fruit come from? So the food world guy said, I don't know. I said, please check where, because you have said it is kiwi. Does it come from New Zealand? He says, I don't know. Then 2 days later, he calls and says, no, we are getting it from China. So we started doing some research on it. And we found kiwi fruits imported from China are soaked with chemicals when on trees to make them grow larger and weigh heavier. Chemical growth hormones has adverse effects on human nervous system, including metabolic disorders, birth defects, and learning disabilities in children. So have we understood the problem? The most important thing is when you look at it, when we do the 360 profiling, we see who is the adversary. If he's smarter than us, the only way is to try to be better than him. So what are the challenges? Today, because companies are trying to reduce costs in every form, they're using supply chain as a tool to reduce costs. Simple, they buy the cheapest from different parts of the world. Even the Tata Nano was built like that. If you take the Tata Nano car, you would find that 90% of the components have been sourced from around the world. And they bring it here. The danger is if we are not sure of the supply chain of these products. The car can crash, anything can happen. Okay? So how do we handle these challenges? From a research perspective, we look around for best practices, deploy appropriate tools, and hand-holding. Basically, when we look at it, we just look at 4 things. Know your adversary, protection against cyber attacks, because we are all linked. Just imagine a scenario that somebody wants to do a cyber war on us. If you go to the hospital, we are all connected to the grid in some form through the electronic equipment. Maybe it's a cardiogram or what. Just imagine somebody wants to know you. He finds that you are in ward number 7. This is your patient. He can just go to the net and just stop the thing that works there. So this is how cyber is becoming so dangerous, even in things that affect the life of people like us. Okay? So how basically, we will go further. That's it. So from where we summarize, we feel from our 360 profiling work, counterfeits are definitely a threat to national security. We are working on it further and further. Building resilience to the chain of custody is quintessential to build credible forms of deterrence. Expert advice and tools are important to build visibility in the chain of custody. Thank you very much. Just giving you a roundabout of how we look at an issue.
Thanks, Toby. Actually, if we stretch the dimension of terrorism, we can cover everything, and we will be very fearful of eating everything and sleeping and wearing and whatnot. So let us again come back to the first few terrors on which we were concentrating more, and then go to the esoteric topics. Meanwhile, you can pose questions to both ma'am, Toby, and Manoj. In few minutes, we will start the valedictory.